We'll get started in just a minute as people are signing in. All right, welcome. My name is Corinne Waldow. I'm the Senior Director for Economic Vitality at the Boulder Chamber, and I want to thank you for joining us for a special session today covering the new public health order that was issued in the city of Boulder. We're hoping today to be able to clear up some of the confusion and answer the questions that are going around concerning this order, specifically in the city of Boulder around individuals between the ages of 18 and 22. At this time, we're just going to get started, and we're going to hand it over to Boulder County Public Health and Jesse Rounds.
Thanks, Corinne, and do let me know if I'm getting too quiet as usual. Oh, too quiet already. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this information session about Public Health Order 2020-07, and we'll just jump right in. I'm going to talk today a little bit about the background of why the order is in place, and then get into the specifics of the order, and then get to the responsibilities of business and enforcement, and then we'll be happy to answer questions after that. So, as I'm sure you're aware, the genesis of this was that we saw a huge increase in cases of COVID-19 over the last 2 weeks. And when we looked into the demographics, we saw that it was actually 80% or more of those cases were coming from CU students. And so under the new dial framework, we were in a situation where we had over 400 cases per 100,000 over the 2-week period. And that put us in a situation where we knew that on the 28th next week, we would be going to the state and saying, we need to figure out how to address this. And so to address that ahead of time, we worked with CU and the city of Boulder to come up with this public health order. And the public health order affects CU students 18 to 22. And the order says sort of 3 main things. One, CU students 18 to 22 may not gather. Residents of 37 specific addresses on the Hill must adhere to stay-at-home regulations, and that CU students should continue to symptom screen and be aware that they need to continue to get tested so that we can understand what's happening. And I just added this note at the bottom of this. The order is in place right now until October 8th, and it may be extended beyond that depending on the situation. So why are we doing this? As I said, an increase in occurrence and transmission among CU students. And then we were seeing repeated public health order violations in congregate housing on the Hill. This was, the safer at home orders make clear that group gatherings are not permitted more than 10 people unless everyone is socially distanced and wearing masks and in very specific situations. And we did not see that happening even after repeated conversations. And so we're really trying to address behaviors. And that's what this order is getting at. So getting back to the order itself, what does gatherings mean? Gathering is of any size that include 18 to 22-year-olds are prohibited in the city of Boulder. And that means when there are 2 or more individuals, that's a prohibited gathering. One caveat to that is that 18-year-olds in high school who would obviously be affected by that may attend school-sanctioned functions and may also gather with their household, obviously. We may get into this later, but I do want to address here that 18 to 22-year-olds who are not under stay-at-home orders are allowed to go to work as long as they mask and continue to social distance. So those subject to stay-at-home orders, um, those residents of those 37 addresses are restricted from leaving their property except for essential activities and essential travel. No public transit or rideshare options for these residents, and non-residents may enter those properties, may not enter those properties. So I'll get into what essential activities and essential travel are in a little bit. So essential travel is only for relocation to an alternative location. And just another note on this, properties with 4 or more residents should not congregate in common areas and must wear face coverings and social distance when in those common areas. So one of the things that we tried to make clear originally for these congregate housing units is that your household under the stay-at-home order and under the safer-at-home order is your room within your congregate housing. Again, I'm getting told that I need to be louder. So in terms of permitted essential activities, this is for stay-at-home and wherever essential activities are mentioned for those 18 to 22-year-olds who are not under stay-at-home. Medical care, including COVID-19 testing, is permitted. Obtaining food and clothing for those who are not under stay-at-home, you are allowed to go get food and clothing as individuals, but you're not allowed to dine outside of your house, and certainly not in groups. And finally, you're allowed to exercise alone within walking distance of your residence in a face covering, and that's for your stay-at-home residents. And then finally, since we are in election season, activities necessary to cast a ballot, although I will remind everyone that mail-in ballots are allowed in Colorado. So to get back to the employees question, I just want to mention CU students may continue to work unless they are unless they are subject to the stay-at-home order. And if stay-at-home people need to work, then they need a special dispensation. The process for that is outlined in the order. Students who do work are not required to be isolated. They just should socially distance and wear masks as required under the existing orders already. In terms of your business, and this is really key, we need your support for this. So we are asking for your support, and we understand that this is hard. So you do not need to be IDing 18 to 22-year-olds to identify if they're gathering. You do not need to refuse service. But what we're really looking for is we need your help. The community as a whole can't look in on every 18 to 22-year-old, but if they're in your business and you have an opportunity to speak with them, to ask them questions, this is a good time to do this, just to see if we can change behaviors. That's really what we're looking to do. Still not loud enough. I'm going to yell now. I think that this came out of a conversation that I had yesterday, and that is that existing reservations, if you have a reservation, if you're a guide, and you have a reservation with a group of 18 to 22-year-olds, you should postpone or cancel that. That would be considered a gathering and therefore is not allowed under the current orders. Finally, in terms of enforcement, if you observe a gathering, and we're talking about large groups, please don't call if you see 2 people hanging out outside a store, even if it's your store. Enforcement is not effective in that situation, but if you see a large group of people, please do call non-emergency dispatch. And if you have questions about enforcement, please contact our email address, covidbiz@bouldercounty.org. And with that, I'm pretty much done here. I just wanted to mention again, we do have our general updates and guidance session, and we had no session this week for our special session, although this is our special session. And next week we'll be talking about the dial, or possibly this again as well. So please do attend those sessions in the future, and I'm happy to answer any questions now.
Okay, while the impetus of this was CU students between the ages of 18 to 22, the order says anyone ages 18 to 22. Can you please verify that it's all individuals between the ages of 18 to 22?
Yes, it is all individuals between the ages of 18 to 22 in the city of Boulder are affected by this order.
And what is the definition of a gathering?
A gathering is 2 individuals or more, 18 to 22. And actually, if an 18 to 22-year-old is gathering with people of other ages, that's also a gathering. That's really, we're looking to have 18 to 22-year-olds not get together with anybody else.
So a non-gathering, one person.
One person, yes, that's maybe the easiest way. One person is okay. Any more than that, not okay.
Okay. So how is a business supposed to know if a person is from one of the 30 so properties that are in a stay-at-home order?
So again, we're not asking businesses to make those calls. If you suspect that a gathering is from one of those houses, definitely call dispatch. But we are not asking that you look at individuals and who are 18 to 22 and decide whether they are from the right address or the wrong address. We're asking simply that those people police themselves unless they end up in large groups, in which case we do need to have dispatch called.
Do you have to refuse them service? Are we saying that that they cannot provide them service or provide them products?
Definitely not. You do not have to refuse service to anyone. What we are asking in this case is that if there's an opportunity to ask them to change their behavior, definitely do that. But you do not have to refuse service to anyone.
I was just going to chime in on this. This one's pretty challenging. So I know that businesses are going to be put in a challenging place. Businesses are not expected to enforce this order, yet this order needs to be effective so that businesses can continue. So if you have patrons that are coming in that are in this age demographic and you sort of just allow them to be there, it will ultimately have impacts. So we do really need your cooperation. You don't have to police this, but if you know it's happening in your business, you should take some action. You're not going to be held liable under the order. We're not going to close you, but this order could change. If it's not effective in the next few weeks, more stringent orders are likely coming down. So, and again, Jesse showed the data. If our strategies are not effective, we already know that we have one of our metrics putting us into stay at home, jumping two levels. So we need to be successful as a collective. So it's really important. I think people have talked about if you're already carding for alcohol because you serve alcohol, you have a great knowledge right there of what age your constituent is. So that certainly can tell you that they're in that demographic. They shouldn't be in your business, and certainly asking them to leave because the public health order requires it is well within your rights. You're not going to be held liable if they're found there, but again, you have a role to play. We're not holding you accountable, but we need your help to be successful.
And if a person between the ages of 18 to 22 wants to come and get curbside, they can still get curbside. If they need to come in and get retail products, if they're coming in to exercise by themselves, not take a group class, but exercise by themselves, they can still do that. But it's just not in groups, not with anybody else.
Yeah, it has to be by themselves. And if they're of that age, they can still work. That is completely permitted, unless they are living at one of those properties. So as an employer, that would be the only piece to look at, is to see if your employee lives in one of those properties. That would be the only prohibition. Otherwise, they can still go to work.
And if they're at work and you have more than one employee who's between the ages of 18 to 22, can they work at the same time?
Yes, they can work at the same time. We don't want them to necessarily have to be or be working next to each other, but yes, they can work at the same time.
all your protocols still are in place of screening your employees for illness. They need to be wearing masks. They need to social distance, hand washing. So nothing else there changes. So all those precautions should still be happening.
Okay. And this is a City of Boulder only order at this time, correct?
Yes. That being said, this applies to that CU demographic, so they should not be going to Lafayette, Louisville, Longmont, other counties to now go out in groups. So if you know that's happening, that's important to know. That's the opposite of what we want to happen, because that's pushing potentially the virus further into our community, and we're trying to contain it. So.
Okay. So, and I actually got some calls from some Lafayette businesses yesterday worried that now that they can't do it in Boulder, are they now going to come into their facilities and work in groups? So if you're seeing that in some of the other towns, you can also call Boulder County Public Health. Can you put up the enforcement contact information? We actually have a couple requests for that. Now the site does say to post a sign that says, there is a request to post a signage that to discourage 18 to 22-year-olds from entering a business. Will there be a sample sign provided for this recommendation?
There is actually already one on our website. It's linked through the FAQs through BCPH. And the sign it's not discouraging them from entering the business, it's discouraging them from entering the business with other people. They should enter the business alone and not gather.
Thank you, Trina. Who will be enforcing these new policies, especially the stay-at-home piece for those individuals that are required to stay at home, especially since rules haven't been followed thus far?
I can answer that one as well, actually.
Thanks, Trina.
So it's a combination of entities. BPD, along with CUPD, along with the Student Discipline Office at CU, is heavily involved in this and has actually done a lot of work behind the scenes that they can't necessarily share individual results of because of privacy laws.
Yeah, and I just to make sure everyone heard that, there has been quite a bit of enforcement for over a month now. So to say that nothing has been happening, that's not true. It hasn't obviously been effective enough to deter all activity, but there has been significant changes. I can tell you that this week, the reports are dramatically different than they have been, and things have been changing. They just haven't changed fast enough.
Jesse, can you scroll back to the enforcement slide?
Absolutely.
So
I'm not, I think, yeah, here. Correct?
It's not moving.
Oh, it's not moving. Give me a second here.
All right. And while you're getting there, there's a question. So it says 18 to 22-year-olds. So let's say a family, 2 parents and 2 kids that are in the age of, or 2 parents and a child between the ages of 18 and 22 want to go into a restaurant. Do you have to call enforcement or deny service if that 18 to 22-year-old is going into a facility with their parents or older adults or others?
I'd like to address this one, actually. The overall goal of this order, I just want to make sure we stay focused on that, is to prevent large gatherings of 18 to 22-year-olds. And someone actually had a really good question in the chat, why 18 to 22-year-olds? That is based on the epidemiological data, which is showing that there's a case count of over 6,000 cases per 100,000 among 18 through 22-year-olds within Boulder County right now. That's in contrast to the approximately 10 to 20 cases per 100,000 that we were seeing over the summer county-wide. So if you're doing your math, that's close to 500 to 1,000 times greater than the type of spread we saw this summer. So it is very significant, and that's why it's the 18 to 22-year-olds who are being prohibited. So I just want to keep that big picture in mind. With respect to a family, like Jesse said earlier, there's no requirement to refuse service. There's not necessarily a requirement to call enforcement. You know, if it's a family, I don't think that BPD would be particularly interested in that. And just to note, there is an exemption in the order for 18 through 22-year-olds who are still in K through 12 education, they may travel with their household, with their family.
And then there was a clarification. Oh, Lane, did you want to add?
Yeah, I just was going to, Trina hit on this. This is not from people that are social distancing and wearing masks. This is from group gatherings where people are not doing any of those things. So that's what has to completely stop. But the lockdown has to be fairly stringent to make sure we don't see any of that happening. So again, gathering is now 2. So we're not going to wait till it's 9 people is fine, because we've been seeing that kind of activity and it's still spreading the virus because people are not social distancing, they're gathering together. So that's why that demographic has been has much more stringent requirements right now, because we're just seeing the data and it's blown up in the last 2 weeks.
And speaking of seeing the data and having it blow up in the last 2 weeks, can you explain why, if we don't bring the data back down, how this will affect our entire county, why this is important that we get this under control now, and why these mitigation efforts were taken right now?
Yeah, so Jesse had shown the slide about the dial. So we currently are in level 2 of Safer at Home. And right now our data, even if nothing happens in the next few days, is already going to send us for one of the metrics into stay at home. So that means next week we will start discussions with the state and really showing why we believe that's not the appropriate move, why we think that the strategies we're putting in place now are what we need to do to try to address this outbreak, so that we do not go into a stay at home across the entire county. So this is again incumbent upon everyone for this to be successful, because it will have impacts that ripple through the county if it's not successful. So we do need this to be something that works. We need to make sure people aren't just moving to other communities. So again, those other communities need to be pretty vigilant to make sure they're not seeing this 18 to 22-year-old group move to other communities to now have congregations and things like that. So we really need to make sure this works.
So some clarification questions. Would playing on a tennis court together, socially distanced, be considered a gathering?
Again, yes, but those aren't the targets. We don't want people calling with every time you see 2 people that look like they're 18 to 22 together. Should they be doing it? No, and we will make sure that messaging is going out there. But that's not going to be where we want to put our focus and attention. You're going to bog down the system if you flood it with those kind of calls. We need to really target the high risk issues. So again, that's not going to be helpful to tell us you see 2 people who might be 18 to 22, and they might not be, that are more than 6 feet apart. Again, we really need this to be targeted on the risk.
So I think there's some confusion. They talk about that you mentioned that you don't need to refuse service or ID, but then you state that you might want to cancel reservations if you know that it's a group of individuals within 18 to 22, or it's a fitness class that's a group within that age group. How these 2 messages seem to be conflicting to some people that are on the webinar. How do we clarify
yeah,
that?
I'm happy to share. There's a distinction between, are you liable under this order for it, or should you do something? And those are not the same answer. You're not going to be held accountable under this order and get in trouble because you didn't do anything. Could things get worse if you do nothing? Absolutely. Could we be in stay at home and shut down your business? Absolutely. So you have a role to make this be successful, but you are not being held accountable, at least under the order, but it has ramifications if it's not successful. So, and there could be additional orders that change that to make it the responsibility of every business to now enforce age restrictions. So again, right now it's not on businesses. You're not required to do it, but yes, you should be proactive at making sure that's not happening in your business.
Okay. What type of marketing are Boulder County Public Health and CU and the city doing to assure that individuals within the age range 18 to 22 are aware of what they can and cannot do? so that they're also self-enforcing?
Well, there's been extensive communication with the CU population really for over a month now. For those targeted properties, there's been hand-delivered packets to every property, so they are very aware of all the things all the restrictions that they are under. In addition, there's been a number of resources provided to the students for mental health support, for other resources. If people are food insecure, there's a number of resources that have been put out so that people are aware of what the restrictions are, and then resources to help them through this time.
I think there's still confusion about what you consider a large group. 5 people, 10 people, 2 people. When you see a group of people, what's that group number?
Yeah, again, Jesse said this, for the order's purposes, two people is a violation of the order. It's really kind of dependent on what's happening as far as the risks. 2 people that are socially distant wearing masks is not very much of a risk, so that's not where we want to focus our attention. 10 people, 20 people, 50 people at Ebony Fine Park, all drinking, standing together, no masks, that's a pretty significant concern.
I would also encourage, as businesses are developing what their guidelines are for calling enforcement, but they take into account things like, are we offering indoor dining services where people are removing their mask? That might be a lower threshold for when you might want to take some action versus, if you're just a shopping business and people are coming in with their masks on and socially distanced, that might be a different consideration.
Okay. For the stay-at-home order part, so those targeted addresses, there is a question if those addresses have been posted, and I believe in the order the addresses that are affected are posted in the order on the Boulder County website, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And most of those are located in what area?
They're on the hill. They're congregate housing units on the hill.
What are the violations? Are we talking jail time? Are we talking fines? What are the violations of these orders?
I'll speak to that. So the violations of the order is against the people who are violating it. So the person who's gathering or leaving their house, and that is all dictated by state statute, the public health statute, which is, I believe, $1,000 or $5,000 fine and some amount of months in jail. But significantly, the city of Boulder has incorporated under their emergency order that violations of a public health order is also a violation of city code, and that is how Boulder PD has been enforcing it. And that comes with 90 days in jail and I believe $1,000 fine. And then I also don't want to leave out the importance of the student discipline process. And those violations through the student discipline code, any violation of a public health order is also a violation of the student discipline code, student conduct code, excuse me. And the penalties there are suspension all the way through expulsion.
Okay. Right. So do students or anybody between the ages of 18 to 22 need special permission to report to work? Or are those only for those individuals that live within the stay-at-home addresses that have to apply for special permission to work if they have hardships?
That is
That is exactly correct. No special permission in general. They would have to apply for a hardship if they're under stay-at-home order.
Okay. So 18 to 22, as long as you don't live at one of those addresses, you can go to work.
Yes.
Okay. You can follow regular work protocols, and then, if you're an employer, you want to continue to require masks, continue doing all of the regular safety protocols that you're required to do on a regular basis.
Yes.
If your employees go to lunch, if your employees are doing activities, the 18 to 22-year-olds can continue to participate in work activities.
Trina, do you want to answer that? I think there is some squishiness there.
So the general rule is if you're between the ages of 18 and 22, you're not prohibited from any specific activity. You're prohibited from doing it with other people. You can do activities alone. The thing that's important for businesses to know is that there is an exemption for an employee situation. I saw several questions in the chat about, you know, if I have 2 employees between the age of 18 and 22-year-old, do I have to separate them out? Nope, you don't have to adjust how your business runs. Just run it under all of the guidelines that you're already using. We don't intend to put extra burden on businesses with this, because we believe that those precautions, the masking, the social distancing, work. We know they work. The data tells us that they do. So the prohibition is really aimed at the social gatherings, and with hopefully as minimal burden on businesses as possible.
Okay. But if you have an employee that lives at one of the stay-at-home addresses, then they have a different process to go through in order to be able to continue to work. They have to prove some sort of hardship and call certain numbers and do all that to be able to apply to be able to continue to work, correct?
Correct, and that is on the individual, not on the business.
Right.
Okay. Are you allowed to prohibit a group of customers who are 18 to 22?
As long as far as public health is concerned, yes.
And then you probably covered this, but how long is this order in effect?
It's in effect until October 8th, with the option to extend depending on the public health situation and any other factors that might contribute to that.
Okay. There's just a lot of questions coming in, so I'm just trying to group them together here. So apparently there are emails going around to employers around town that say that if you have an employee in the CU system, that they need to get a permission to go to work. We will probably try to figure out, if you did get an email like that, it probably could be good if you send it to one of us, figure out where that's coming from so we can get to the bottom of that, because that's not in the order, the particular order. A sample poster that Trina mentioned is not up live yet, but the intention is to get a sample poster up onto the FAQ site. And when that sample poster goes up, I will also send it out via email with the FAQs. So that was like 3 questions right there. When we ask young individuals if they're in the age group of 18 to 22, do we risk opening ourselves up to an age discrimination case? This might be for you, Trina.
I think you're going to have to consult with your lawyer about that one.
Okay.
Someone did also mention the FFCRA. If your employee lives in one of the affected residents, are they protected under that? I also recommend consulting with your attorney about that, but I'm also really glad you're thinking about that.
Yeah. So there are resources on Boulder County, Boulder Chamber, and a lot of websites that if you have an employee that's required to stay at home, that you should look into the FFCRA consult, maybe Employers Council if you don't have an attorney and so forth about some of those. I will send my email to the person that would like to send me the email that they received. All right. Do we have to pay employees if they live at that address? And Trina, that kind of goes back to some of the HR rules and HR laws and what they're covered under in their particular case, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. So you're gonna need to look at the FFCRA and look at some of that long-term and short-term disability and all that.
May I address real quick? I'm seeing a bunch of questions about the city versus the county and other jurisdictions.
Absolutely, so, Trina.
I can just speak to that real quick. The order applies within the city of Boulder, and once again, that's very data-based. You'll probably get tired of hearing me say that, but we looked at all of the data county-wide, and it made sense that to contain the spread, we really had to look at the city of Boulder. I recognize that businesses from other jurisdictions may be concerned about people leaving Boulder to go patronize businesses out there or gather out there. We are in the process of setting up a surveillance system of sorts, although maybe that's not the best term for it, but just making sure that we're monitoring the situation to make sure that we're not seeing gatherings increase too much outside the city of Boulder. That is not the intent of the order. And the other question I saw in there, if you're coming from if you're 18 through 22-year-olds and coming outside into the city of Boulder, how does the order apply? It applies to you. It doesn't matter where you live. If you're physically within the city of Boulder, there's no gathering with that age group.
Okay. So thank you. That was my next set of questions were about, I try to group them together by the type of questions. So I appreciate you grabbing those together. So the purpose of this was to curb moving towards a countywide stay-at-home order if not getting our numbers down. So moving on this dial system, we need to get our numbers down. We know that the current cases are targeted towards Boulder. They're targeted toward, Trina brought up great numbers about the massive increase in cases within this age range, the data behind that. The county had to prove to the state you were going to be doing some mitigation efforts in this particular age range and with CU Boulder. Will we know, when will we know whether or not we will be moving up or down the dial, and will we be able to have any idea in the next week's Wednesday session? What's the process there?
I can't answer the specific date right now, but I will tell you to stay tuned because we are very aware that businesses want heads up about these things. So we are requesting concrete guidance from CDPHE about the timing of when we will take a look at the data again, when adjustments will be made, and I expect that messaging will be sent out on that soon.
Great.
And we will certainly be sharing updates at our Wednesday sessions next week of what we know. We will definitely be in discussions with the state looking at the metrics. I think our goal would be that we have 2 additional weeks to evaluate and implement all these practices and not make any changes to our status. But again, that'll be dependent on what the data looks like. If we see significant spread in the community, that'll be much more difficult to justify. But if it's continue to see downward trend and not expansion, then we'll be in a much better position.
How does this affect tourism? So what if we have a large group of people coming into town, don't know this order is in effect, maybe not even a large group, a couple 18 to 22-year-olds coming to town to visit and they're not from here? How does this affect those individuals from out of the area and their ability to really participate and enjoy the city of Boulder?
It applies to anyone. It's not just people who are residents of Boulder. It's anybody who would be in the city of Boulder. So certainly it's important that they're not engaged in activities where they're not social distancing, if they're not wearing masks. Those are all risk factors regardless of whether they're residents or not. So those are the types of activities that are going to draw enforcement attention.
Has this course of action been used by any other communities, in Colorado and other college towns? We've heard that other college towns are having similar issues to Boulder around the nation. Has this been the course of action in other communities?
Every community has to address their spread differently. I frankly have not done a national survey, so I don't know the specifics of what every college town has done. I know that Denver and Fort Collins have enacted some targeted public health orders similar to what we have done, and other folks are looking at us to see how well this works as well.
There have been other colleges that have taken actions, either stay at home, cancellation of things. So there's a whole wide variety of different strategies that have been implemented across the country.
And then we got a question of what FFCRA is, and I'm going to put into the chat. It's the Family First Coronavirus Relief Act. The Family First Coronavirus Relief Act and I will put the link to the Department of Labor information on it. It's the Employer Paid Leave Act that went into effect early on in coronavirus. So I put that link into the chat for anybody that's wondering about that. Somebody said they read in the paper today that the numbers from yesterday are the lowest since the beginning of the month and show a 2-day decline. Are these new orders a little too late since the numbers are going down, or are they an indication that some of the mitigation efforts are working and this will just increase those mitigation efforts?
I don't know if it's too late. If we would have done it earlier, people would have want to know the justification for why you're doing that order. So it's really challenging to proactively put such a restrictive order in place when you don't have any instance of outbreak. I think the challenge is we don't necessarily have a trend just based on 2 days of data. So we will be looking at that 2-week data and continuing to move it as we progress forward. But we would never just look at 2 days worth of data.
Okay. So we have a retailer on who has, they have a job training program, adults with developmental disabilities, job coaches, apprentices. They're in, employment type situation. I think they're still confused as to whether or not they can work together. And can we just repeat again, if they are employees or job training and that type of situation, if they're between the ages of 18 to 22, they can continue to work, correct?
Yes.
And they can continue to work together, but they need to continue to stay masked, maintain social distancing when possible, continue to practice all of those retail practices that we've sent out, and just make sure that we're controlling what we can to control within your business. Don't allow the spread of the disease within your business. All right.
I saw in the question and answer, I erred in one of my slides. 18 to 22-year-olds, not just CU students 18 to 22, but 18 to 22-year-olds may not gather. So that was an error on the slide that I'll correct.
Okay. So can an 18 to 22-year-old come into a studio and take a fitness class with a mask and stay socially distanced?
No.
No. How are we expected to police the client's ages at that point, though?
Again, we're not expecting that businesses are here for enforcement, but what you certainly could do is you could identify every client that comes in. That's something you could do. You're not being required to do it, though. Very much like people do ID checks for alcohol or for other substances that need a certain age. That's something you could do. You're not being required to do it, though.
But if you know somebody is between 18 and 22, it's in your best interest during this 2-week time to help mitigate the spread of the disease, to prevent us from moving into stricter county regulations later on. If you know their age, the order says they can't participate in activities with more than one person. If you're carding for a drink, their age is in the system, those types of things. You're not asking for them to ID everybody at the door, but if you know their age, that's a different story.
Yeah, but you could. There's nothing that would prevent you from IDing all your patrons. It'd just be an extra workload for you, but then you would know, and you wouldn't be discriminating anyone because you're IDing everyone.
When will businesses know if the restrictions like this order will be extended?
So the Board of Health will meet to discuss extension probably the week, I think October 8th is a Thursday, so that week, and we'll know closer to the date, because the goal is to monitor the data to see if an extension is necessary. And also I just wanted to add, because so many folks have had questions about paid leave, what do I do with my employees, etc. If there are questions where we're telling you to go talk to a lawyer, there is a resource for you, particularly for small businesses. The Colorado Attorney General's office, and I don't know if you guys have discussed this before, they've set up a way to provide free legal advice. Please take advantage of that. I've heard it's good.
I've sent that out. I think I've sent it out quite a few times, but I will send it out again in this email for that legal advice. A bunch of us chambers fought for that many months ago because we kept sending people to talk to a lawyer, and it was not every business has a lawyer to talk to. So, all right. Are there any concerns that students will just push back and just party on? I'm using the term in the question, not my own personal colloquialism.
You know, I think that any public health order, any law, there's always a risk that people aren't going to listen. But, you know, that's why there are consequences in place. And this is really about personal responsibility. And I really, truly hope and believe that our community has it in them to do the right thing.
So I think this question's coming from personal services. So Jesse, put your personal services hat on. How should businesses perceive who offer personal services to people in this age range, especially since in some of these cases, there's some mask removal? You know, students in the listed addresses likely do not have all state IDs to prove for or against residencies at a listed address. And I think there's some concern from, you know, some personal services where, you know, there's a little bit more closer contact. How should they proceed as a personal service?
So I'm happy to, if either Trina or Elaine want to jump in on this, but I would say if you are offering personal services to groups of 18 to 20-year-olds, 22-year-olds, you can't do that. If you're offering personal services to individuals, you can continue to do that. You do not need, but if you know they're 18 to 22 and the personal service you're going to provide requires them to take their mask off, I would seriously consider maybe not providing that service during this period. That is, you know, again, that's up to you. And in terms of people at the 37 addresses, it is not your responsibility to know those addresses and to police every single individual at those addresses. That's the responsibility of CU and City of Boulder and Public Health. So we're handling that. I would just caution during this period, if you know someone is 18 to 22 and you're offering a personal service where they have to take off a mask, consider postponing. Would be my advice.
I think we need to distinguish the services, you know, like limited healthcare services, personal services. So again, 18 to 22-year-olds should be going out for sort of essential things, but not to go get a facial and things like that, because that's now going to be more than one person. You know, they're going to be in close proximity. So I think we just need to be very careful about what activity that is. So certainly healthcare needs still need to be met, but not non-essential things.
Thanks, Lane. That's, yeah, good point.
And this order is in effect for 2 weeks.
Yes.
Can an 18 to 22-year-old take a guided trip with their parent?
If they're living in Boulder and their parents live in Boulder, then yes, I think that's allowed. Trina and Lane, I don't know if you have a different take on that.
I would just say that's kind of the details that is not necessarily the focus of this order. The focus of this order is really on large social gatherings. You know, I think if you get down into the details and the weeds, there's ways for that to be done, but the focus is really on preventing large social gatherings.
Certainly if that 18-year-old is a high school student, that is allowed. But again, yeah, as Trina mentioned, the focus is on the high risk behaviors.
We have a couple of people that are concerned about the backlash. People live in groups of 3 or 4, but we're asking them now to spend time in one person. And, you know, are there concerns, or are there concerns about the backlash? Are there steps being taken to assure that, you know, the feedback from this 18 to 22-year-olds is being heard, that they don't feel that they're being discriminated against. I think there's just a lot of fear that that's going to be felt from that population.
Yeah, I think there's been a ton of effort going back months and months now to have engagement with the students, and CU has certainly led that, but public health has also had made efforts to engage with them. So we want to change behavior. So these orders are sort of some of the last resorts at changing behavior. So we've had months of effort, and these are some of the last steps. But I think there is always concern that there's sort of backlash, but at the same time, our goal is to make sure we have a healthy community, and we need to stop the spread of this disease. So that's our mission, and that's our focus. We know that there's, as far as are we sort of targeting a specific age group, we're using our epidemiological data to make decisions. So it's 100% clear where the risk is happening in our community. It's in the city of Boulder. It's in that 18 to 22-year-old range, and specifically 18 to 19 is even higher than the 18 to 22-year-old. So that is why the order is written the way it is. It's completely based on the data of how the disease is being spread currently.
Can you repeat one more time what you do if you have a group of what you know are 18 to 22-year-olds who come into our restaurant?
Yes.
Do you allow them in? Or do you deny them to come in and call the police? Can you one more time? And your slides haven't changed, so if you were going to bring back up the slide.
I don't know how to change. I guess I can unshare and then I'll reshare. Let me see. So is that changing now?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much, Jesse.
No, I appreciate that.
There we go. Oh, go back one. You were there. There you go.
Yeah. So if you have concerns about a large group of people gathering, call non-emergency dispatch, and that number is on the screen, 303-441-3333. And again, the order does not require you or even request that a business inquire about the ages of a group of people coming into their restaurant. But if you are concerned, as Lane said, you have a right to inquire about their ask for their IDs, basically. That would be the point. If you saw a group of people and you had reason to suspect that they were in that age group, you could call non-emergency dispatch. But again, we're trying to address those large groups of people, and it is your discretion how you want to proceed with that. But we do encourage you to call dispatch in those cases.
Okay, and so so don't call 911, right?
Do not call 911, please.
Okay. All right. So we'll send out this number. It's on the Boulder County Public Health site. I know now Downtown Boulder Partnerships sending out a lot of this information. It's on the FAQs. The link was out. Maybe have it out there for your for any at the register, the front desk. That's the number you can call. If you have any questions about enforcement, you can email the covidbiz@bouldercounty.org. That is the same email address you've sent a lot of the questions over the last couple months. Can you please share the epidemiology slide again, since your slide?
Sure. So this is the percent positivity. I'm sorry, the number of new cases and probable cases since the end of August.
Here's another good reason why we need to look at overall trends over, again, at least a week, 2 weeks. You can see kind of in the middle of the slide, 2 consecutive days where things go down, then it goes up, and then it goes down, then it goes way up, then it's down, then it's way up and down and up and up. So again, this trend is significantly up. You don't look at just individual days, and then also that cumulative averages, and then look back at the beginning of the slide. These are days. This isn't months or weeks. So look where we were a month ago. So that's how quickly things can change. So we can't just wait and see if things get better. We need to make sure we have as many actions in place to help assure they get better.
Does an employee have to carry around a letter stating that they're working?
No, there's nothing in the order that requires that they have evidence that they are, working or anything like that. I'm not sure exactly what the situation in that case would be, but
the only caveat is if people are in a stay-at-home order, they're not
yes.
allowed to go to work unless they get sort of a hardship approval. But police are not going to be looking for individuals walking or riding their bike or driving to work to pull them over to find out where they're going and things like that. So this is not the concern. So there's no proof to show you're on your way to work or on your way to a doctor's appointment when you're by yourself.
And I see where businesses are coming from. When the stay-at-home orders happened, to prove that you're an essential business, a lot of businesses created these letters for their essential employees to carry around. This is different. I want to point out we're not in the same place we were when everybody was required to stay at home, and if there was a car on the road, it was seen as odd, and they were going to be checking to see where that person was going. Your employee is allowed to go to work. Your 18 to 22-year-old can go to work. RTD is still running. I got that question yesterday. RTD is still running its routes. They're not going to stop RTD from running around Boulder. The one thing is the people that are at stay at home are not allowed to ride on RTD, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. But I do see where some of these questions are coming, because when we were in the early stages of this crisis, there was a lot of just uncertainty as to what do we do? How do we get our employees in? How do we do this? And I think just the fear of back in that stage. And I just want to, you can go to work. Somebody comes in alone and they want to dine, can come dine. They can come get something in the retail spot. They can come work out by themselves. You're just trying to stop the spread, stop people from convening in groups, so that we as a community do not move into stricter protocols as an entire community. I think that's the ultimate goal of this mitigation strategy, and it's for 2 weeks at this point. Okay, I'm looking to make sure I covered all questions. Are there any additional questions? We had 70 questions come in, so if you saw me just trying to, they came in via text, I got them via Q&A, email. So thank you for fixing your microphone, Jesse. I appreciate
Yeah, no,
that.
thank you for saying something.
The clarification, again, it's not just CU students, it's 18 to 22. They can work unless they're in one of the stay-at-home properties, in which case they have to file for some sort of hardship. That you can still provide them, you can still allow them to, eat, buy your products. They just can't be in groups, and groups mean anybody more than one. So let's just, as a community, we're trying to come together, mitigate the spread of this disease. We're trying to work together as a community to do everything we can so that we're not in a stricter situation throughout all of Boulder County. If you are in a business outside of City of Boulder and you start to see groups of young people, 18 to 22 from City of Boulder, come into yours, contact those lines and let us know. We did have some concerns from businesses outside, just so that we're aware. If you have questions in between, the contact information is up there. And if people want to take strict protocols within their businesses and make sure that they're following the strictest protocols, please stay as safe as possible. Again, we're doing this for our safety, for our health, and ultimately for our economy. All the businesses on this call, we want to stay open, and we want to be able to move up the dial, not down the dial. I don't see any more questions. I was just giving us time to see if any more questions come in. There is a lot of data on the Boulder County Public Health website. If you want more information on epidemiology, you want more information on where we are on the dial, please go. He presented 2 data points today. There's a lot more, and I have a couple more, comments and questions about that. There's a lot more up there. Please go in. There's a lot of data on the state of Colorado website. Go there. There's a lot of information about this particular age group and in different sites as well. Read the order. And then we did have a request, and I'll make that request too. In the future, can we try to have these calls before the order goes into effect? Or, I know that wasn't possible, yeah. But in the future, if we could have some warning so that we could try to stem the confusion before the order goes into effect as much as possible. I think there was a little bit of confusion yesterday, and we appreciate everybody. We had quite a few people join us today, and we try to clear up as many questions as possible. We did record this. We did it Facebook Live. We will send out an email. Thank you, Boulder County Public Health, for pulling this together in like less than 15 minutes. We got everybody, ready to go. We'll see everybody next week on Wednesday at 3 o'clock, right?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you, Corinne, for helping.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.